They called me Subject Solomon O1, all the way down there, 5 cellars below the Pentagon. Though I prefer Derek. I had been kept down there between 2019 and 2025, being given vitamin D supplements and designated dietitians to overcorrect my lack of sun, though my prolonged reclusiveness has left me pale and sable. I'm not sure if the purple underneath my eyes is from this 6-year banishment, or from the sheer hopelessness that the American swiping experiment instilled within me. That's what it was called, or what they told me it was called. The American swiping experiment. As far as I know, I was the only subject. I was a part of this experiment, composed by people I'd never know, with faces I'd never see. Faces I can't swipe left or right on. I do know, however, that the experiment was funded by USAID, and well, you can imagine why they let me out in the year 2025. Subject Solomon O1. They gave me this nomenclature as a nod to King Solomon, who had 700 wives, and because I was born in 2001. I wasn't stupid enough to go to college, but I was just stupid enough to try and join the army. My recruiter told me to lie about my allergy to amoxicillin, but I let it slip at MAPS. Some might say I dodged a bullet, but they never could have known the 6 years solitude that followed suit, 5 cellars below. I didn't either. So, when one of the staff members at MAPS asked me, "You still interested in serving your country, son?" I didn't hesitate to say yes. How curious the US government sometimes is. Not the politicians, but the people you'll never know about. Politicians mostly only care about money, but these people care, if you could call it that, about sinister things. They are so removed and so staked inside their night vision games of global chess that things as simple as teenagers sharing a milkshake in a diner has always baffled them. They wouldn't ever admit this, but you'd be surprised to know just how many secret agents were in those diners in 1958 and 1959, peeking over their newspapers to keep an eye on the local high school couple. And after spending 6 years, 5 cellars below the Pentagon, I'm convinced that these people know nothing about love. And part of me is glad they never will. They monitored me for 6 years, monitoring my progress on apps like Tinder, Hinge, and Bumble, just to see if I discovered what love was. It was like I was some kind of vessel, an oracle, and if I happened upon the right match, then I would give them all the secrets of love. I adapted to my routine 5 cellars below. My profiles were updated every 6 months, and because of my dietitian and exercise routine, I was averagely fit, a lot more average than most Americans. But there was still the problem of having no sun, which made me built in the way a vampire is. Muscles resilient and built only because something was stopping them from withering. Every 6 months they took me into the studio, the kind wackos would say the moon landing was filmed in, and they did an alien photo shoot with me. Green screens and digital backgrounds assisted them. My swiping was done in what looked like to be an interrogation room left over from the Vietnam era. The walls were a dark opal, and despite their efforts, there were just barely visible splotches of brown throughout the room. There was an old box television on a cart, a dentist chair, which I sat in, and a fogged window underneath the ceiling. Sometimes I would be hooked up to EEG machines, but this felt like the least invasive part of the routine. That was where the researchers watched me from, blurred behind the glass. I remember watching their figures meander and make subtle movements, probably writing things down as I spoke monotonously inside the chamber. Right. Besides the old box television was a computer monitor that screen shared what the researchers were doing in the other room. I presume that they were on an iPhone, on whatever dating app I was meant to swipe through that day, and they did the swiping for me. It was as if my single-syllable commands did the swiping itself, and I controlled the screen in front of me just with my voice.
Subject Solomon,
came the altered voice, deeply through a speaker. I snapped out of my trance. Right, I said. The profile card changed. Right. I paused. Left. Right. The voice came through in its distorted form, blurry like the figures behind the glass.
Alexa, 26, Veterinary School.
Play the song in the profile, I said. What I believe was Childish Gambino came through the speakers. Left, I said. Next profile card. She was pretty, so I didn't hesitate in saying, right.
Much,
said the masked voice. Left. Right. Right. Left. In the army, my lefts and rights would have been just about my cadence in marching, I imagine. Left. Left. Right.
much,
Right. I paused. Right. Another pause. Left. Whenever I paused, the masked voice read the person's name, age, and bio aloud.
Mackenzie, 22, not here for a long time, but here for a good time.
Song in bio, I requested,
As it was by Harry Styles.
said the masked voice. Right.
You sure? You sounded hesitant.
I nodded. Right. I wasn't allowed to talk to my matches or reply to them, though they rarely made attempts at conversation. I only had access to my account inside the chamber. It wasn't constant. I was allowed breaks, but you'd be surprised just how many women there are in the world. I don't know if I barely scraped the surface in the span of 6 years. Sometimes the girls were so pretty that it broke my heart that I couldn't talk to them. All I was meant to do was swipe, not designed to fall in love. I'm not entirely sure what the hypothesis of the experiment was. I can only surmise that they were trying to pinpoint what kind of men the female populace favors, or summarize what I favored. Swiping patterns? Right, right, right. How deep and monstrous that masked voice was.
Subject Solomon, be a little more prudent with your solutions.
You have to understand, I don't know why a desperation was beginning to come over me some days inside that chamber. I swallowed back. Left. Whenever there was a new dating app, they made profiles for me on those too. but we mostly used Tinder and Bumble. I swear I started dreaming of swiping, profile cards being dealt from left and right. I thought I was going to go blind that day in February 2025, when the sect in charge of the experiment was disbanded. Apparently, USAID was found to be funding somewhat questionable things overseas, and most sects that leached off USAID for nefarious purposes scrambled and panicked. I was like a tiger that had spent so long in a zoo only for some new law to be passed that forced the zoo to let me out in the wild. That elevator ride that morning felt like an ascension to heaven. They walked me to an administrative floor on the Pentagon where I was reimbursed, quite handsomely in fact. Given an iPhone, a driver's license, and everything a normal citizen needs. They also had me sign a non-disclosure agreement. Oops. The reimbursement I received was the estimated amount of money I would have earned had I been walking in the outside world for 6 years, instead of spending my twilight teenage years and early 20s 5 cellars below. I was too dumbfounded, too institutionalized, to really be excited about the money they were giving me. But I had the inclination that the whole entire human race was waiting outside for me. Maybe all the girls I had ever swiped on. And when my escort, a silent woman in a dark blue dress suit, with her blonde hair slicked back in a bun, walked me out into the parking lot, I squinted. The sun exploded with furious surprise, as if to shout, "Who is that?" when we walked outside. And well, she kind of just left me standing there in the parking lot. No longer property of the U.S. government, properly abandoned. I turned around and she was gone. So was the masked voice, and so were all my matches. So I stood there with my backpack on, and my face up to the sun, the sky as bright as the blue explosion of a super-like. Like someone encountering snowfall for the first time, I rubbed the air between my thumb and fingers, as if to feel the fabric of sunlight. I felt the muscles in my face pull themselves into an expression of inquiry. Out of sheer curiosity, my new fortune, and nothing to do, I took an Amtrak out of Virginia and into Boston. I examined my own hands for most of the train ride. It was almost as if I was human again. Very odd. The train rocked and rocked in vain attempts to rattle me out of my fish-out-of-water trance, but to no avail. The wheels along the rails were vibrating up into my legs for hours, making me wish for the stillness of the dentist's chair. I was a human soda bottle, being shaken up and ready for a bubbly combustion, something which my trance caped. As far as I'm concerned, every person should have this kind of born-again moment in their lives. It's mystifying and wakes you up, the feeling of sudden liberty. There's a sudden struggle between your old self and whoever comes next. Whoever comes now. I know this because a good time on that train ride was spent with me looking down at the App Store on my new iPhone. Tinder, free. Big blue letters spelling out "Get" beside the app icon. I blinked at it. Was I going to download it or not? This I considered while the trajectory of the train rocked me in my seat. I ultimately did not download the app or any other dating apps, primarily because I was afraid of what would happen if I did actually get a match and actually got to talk to someone. For as I've said before, I wasn't permitted to. One of the thoughts that swished around on that train ride was the memory of the researcher sitter's voice, the one who would watch me from behind that fogged glass. I had never recognized the motherly aspect in the masked voice until then, until I realized I was relinquished from it. I remembered how mechanically it would say
much
into the speaker, and how that used to cause something to fizzle within me. Brief validation inside a government lab, 5 cellars below. But I was trading in moments of brief validation for that long, novel hope. The seagulls welcomed me in the undercroft of Back Bay Station in South Boston. They waddled with their weird gaits of their webbed feet as I politely passed into the world again. I've Punxsutawney Philly'd myself back into existence. I'm hoping the US government isn't aware of Subject Solomon 01's new favorite place, which is on a lake in Wakefield, Massachusetts, called Lake Quannapowitt. There's a thin coating on the earth here, like a negligee of vanilla frosting. It makes you wonder what flavor cake the earth below it is. The lake itself has frozen, and I've seen people ice skating on it every day I've come here. I come here a lot because I like to people watch. I sit on a bench between the shore of the lake, which is hidden in snow, and a gazebo with my back to the gazebo and my front to Lake Quannapowitt. I sit there, part of me, still somewhere 5 cellars below. Part of my conscience replaying residual sounds of myself saying left, right, 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 left. Subject Solomon 01. There are buildings and businesses beyond the street that hoops around the lake and the park surrounding it, but I don't have much interest in them aside from the Gingerbread Construction Company. If you're ever in Wakefield, Massachusetts, go there. Trust me. I always get the gingerbread woman instead of the gingerbread man, because the women cookies have dress shapes, which means there's more gingerbread in their forms. I have seen the greatest of humanity that I have missed. Mothers bring their toddlers out on the ice, and I get to watch them learn to skate. The toddlers almost the same size as the seagulls back in Back Bay Station. I sit on the same bench daily, eating gingerbread and drinking coffee while I have hand warmers in my gloves and breath crowding like ballerinas behind the curtain in my lungs. Aside from the mothers teaching their children to skate, I see college-aged groups of friends walk. Sometimes they throw snowballs at each other, and the snowballs disband against their shoulders just as wonderfully as USAID has. I've since learned this is a controversial opinion, but I spent 6 years 5 cellars below for it. I am, however, content with keeping my opinions to myself and eating my gingerbread in peace. It is almost as if all these people were trapped inside all the dating apps, and I had taken my phone and thrown it down on the floor of one of the Pentagon hallways, the screen and hardware of the phone coming apart in pieces, like a vial that contained a wisp of all their souls. Some sinister container has been smashed, and all of them have been released. They convene on and around Lake Quannapoit, unaware of the phantom of the dating apps. Now they skate, make muffled footfall on the snow, and throw snowballs at each other and laugh. I've seen a couple of women that I like, escaped from Hinge and Tinder profile cards. I can't swipe left or right on them, and there's something wonderful about it. I saw a short woman whose hair, obviously dyed orange for how neon it is, who led her flock of friends past me as if I was never there. She was so pale that she seemed immune from having her cheeks and nose reddened by the cold. She was singing some song, one I don't know, and I looked at her eyes hopelessly as the group passed. Though I know not how or why, this taught me that there is something hopeful about being hopeless. Another woman that I found beautiful was either a mother or babysitter who gave a little boy a push across the ice. Her smile beamed all the ways away from the ice to where I sat. Brown eyes, gleeful smile, puffy red jacket. Unlike the other, her cheeks were red like roses hiding behind opaque white curtains. I've seen couples too, walking hand in hand, despite the gloves that are woolly barriers between their skin. They exude such foreign comfort, atmospheres I haven't learned to breathe in yet. I could go on, but I won't. I could go on and describe the different uniqueness of every woman I find attractive or intriguing, but I won't. They're no longer just profiles from the dating apps. They are real people, oblivious to me, and it's wonderful. I sit here on the bench and wait to become as oblivious as all of them. Animations projected from the snow. Humans in wintertime, not people on a dating app. They are not decided by the power of a thumb. They skate left, they skate right, they go whichever direction they want. And if our trajectories interlap, then so be it. One of these days, I know I'll be able to finally approach one of these women. Maybe in the springtime, when we find out what flavor the earth is. My only fear is that I end up panicking and shouting, "Right!" when I stand in front of them. There's a good chance of that happening, but it'll be a hell of a first meeting story. But for now, February 2025, I'm content with sitting here and watching people being people, when and where I don't have to swipe at all. You've been listening to 5 Cellars Below, a short story by Nicholas Leonard, read by Naya Nomikou.